Hi, I'm Jason Bean. I'm the art director here at the Gambit Lab. On this project, I was the embedded staff member. Before I came to MIT, I was art director at one of THQ's internal studios. I worked there for about 7 years, working on Pixar and Nickelodeon titles for Nintendo DS and Game Boy Advance.
And I'm Clara Fernandez-Vara, and I'm a postdoc researcher at Gambit. Before that, I got my master's at the Comparative Media Studies program, and I also got my PhD from Georgia Tech. So for the new project, the idea was taking dreams, the logic of dreams, how would we implement that in an adventure game, particularly as mold for the puzzles. And that was a tricky question because you have to make puzzles that make sense but not quite. You know, how do you make that interesting? How do you make that playable? How do you make that doesn't really feel random, that the player really feels that they're making sense of that puzzle, even if it's kind of off the wall and it's kind of tricky. As we went through and the prototypes that I worked on before the summer, the idea of the dream logic became more interesting as we were thinking about generating the puzzles procedurally as a way of bringing randomness. You know, computers are very good at making random decisions. So why not letting the randomness of computers model the puzzles? You know, we tell the computer, we build a model that is the mind of one person, and in the same way that in our dreams, our minds produce the relationships that build up our dreams, why don't we make the computer produce those dreams in the form of puzzles? So all throughout it's been a struggle to balance the dream logic and the procedural generation. Which one was more important? Are we preserving the playability versus the procedural generation? And there were some calls in that respect during development where at a certain point we decided that the puzzles were a bit more predictable, you know, less emergent. They were more restricted, but as a way of helping the player make sense of the game, you know, making the game more accessible to the player. So kind of like sacrificing a bit of the system in favor of making it playable, actually.
One of the major problems that we had with the game from the summer was that it didn't really provide a satisfying resolution as far as fiction is concerned to the player to wrap up the game experience, and that's something that Claire's been addressing in this past semester.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've worked on during the fall is actually having ending puzzles. The game can be played, you can continue playing it for as long as you want. It can be replayed hundreds of times, which is actually one of the discoveries of the procedural generation. But it's true that as part of the fiction, as part of the story of SYMON, of this character in whose head we're in, you know, this is a paralyzed patient, you know, and all his dreams are about his hopes, his shattered hopes most of the time. You know, there's his childhood story, you know, all the things that he wishes he would have done. But what we wanted to add were three endings that are kind of hard-coded, and they're providing a sense of closure. Of you play the game 3 times, you're not going to get all the possible items or combinations ever, but at least you get a sense of who this person is, and you know where he comes from and what he's hoping for.
And the way it's presented encourages the player, if they're playing and they get to the end of the game the first time through, they have a little bit of a hint that there's something more, so it encourages them to play again and experience that procedural generation and the randomness that it provides, which if we didn't do that, they may not play it again and get that full experience.